Welcome back to Grace in the Chaos, a podcast of real-life insight from parents of children with special needs. I'm Dr. Ryan Rush, and I'm joined by my friend and co-host, Dr. Chris Sneller.
Hello.
And yes, we both have PhDs, but more importantly, we're dads who live this out every day in our homes. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Ryan, great to be with you today. So, Grace in the Chaos, a good description of our life, oftentimes. We've created this podcast to really share with you stories of families that we admire, families that we look up to, because they're really journeying, trusting God in the midst of the chaos in their lives. So we're here to learn lessons and just struggle along with various families. We're blessed today to hear from Tim and Talida Chen. So thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming. Thanks
Glad
for bringing
to be
us
here.
gifts of tea to
I know,
drink
this
during
tea is
the time.
fantastic. We want to start by just hearing a little bit about your lives. So give us a quick biography. What's your background? How did you guys meet?
I'll start. Timothy Chen. I was born in Taiwan and lived there till I was 6, where my father then brought us to the United States to continue education and ended up staying to work. I've grown up in a Christian home all my life and have had interesting experiences living along the East Coast. We started in Virginia Beach, Norfolk area, then moved down to Raleigh, North Carolina. We then moved to upstate New York in a town called Poughkeepsie, and then went to school in Pittsburgh. My family then moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana.
All over.
We then moved after graduation to New York City, where we spent more than 12, 13 years together, and we started our family there. And we moved to Katy in the summer of 2021.
Great. I love your story of how you found your house in Katy. There was one kind of grocery store that was central to the story of where you moved.
What?
Yeah. Do you know this story?
No.
It's great.
So when we were looking at homes during the peak COVID time, and we had no idea how to, spec out where was a good location. We had an idea of where we wanted our school to be, and as soon as we put it in Google Maps, we understood where that was. And then the next question is, where can we get Asian groceries? So if along 99, there's in Katy, Asian Town, with an H Mart.
H Mart.
So the criteria became we'll live in between school and H Mart.
H Mart.
And a Trader Joe's. We did
And a Trader.
There you go.
The Trader
There you go.
Joe's.
A little further south, but that's essentially how we found our home.
Yeah, for those listening outside of the Katy or West Houston area, we have this glorious center we call Katy Asian Town, where there's just every kind of nation
Fantastic.
from the Far East that you can
So good.
imagine with really cool stuff. So yeah, but I can almost go anywhere and they know who Trader Joe's is, right?
Right.
Yep.
For sure. Talida, tell us about your background.
Yeah, so I'm going to start by saying I am a born and raised Texan. So I was born right here in Houston.
Yeah.
I grew up here and went to college in Pittsburgh. That is where we met in our college Christian fellowship there. And when we found work, he first started working in New York. I was in D.C. for a couple years. Mm-hmm. And then when we decided to get married, that's when I moved up to New York. And so I would say career-wise, we've always been in technology. I started out with software development, software sales, and then kind of took a career transition into wedding planning and then even church administration. Okay. I don't know if y'all knew that. To currently, I'm a stay-at-home mom and advocating for my girls' education.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
So how'd you meet? You met at school. You met in the Christian fellowship.
That's right.
But tell us the romantic story
Yes,
here.
please.
We have differing versions of it.
This
is a common theme. It is indeed.
Yeah, but what I can remember is that I was just hanging out one day in the courtyard in front of some classrooms, and this girl walks by, cute girl with a purple North Face backpack, and I was like, oh, who's that? Come to find out that she was actually the sister of one of my friends who was in our fellowship. So Talida's brother, Ron, was a year above me. We had already been friends for a little while. And it turns out that Talida also decided to join her brother there at school. And we were all in the same fellowship and church while we were there in our college career.
All right.
Yeah.
So the rest is history,
basically
right?
it. Yeah,
Basically
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, you'll agree with that portion. All right. I like it. Okay, so when did you begin your special needs journey?
That's a good question. So I would say I guess to explain about our family, we've got twin girls. They are 9 and they are both on the autism spectrum, and they are our only children. So we started when Cassie got her first diagnosis, and I would say it was pretty much a textbook diagnosis for her. So meaning she'd never really developed from the beginning. She wasn't talking at 15 months. There was just a lot of meltdowns, a lot of screaming at that time. And, first-time parents, we were just kind of looking for the answer. So I remember showing up to a women's prayer meeting, just asking the older moms, like, what do I do? Who do I call? What therapist, what doctor, what can we do to fix this? And I think it was one of the moms who actually was a therapist with, a behavior therapist who worked with autistic kids. She pulled me aside and said, I think something else is going on. So she actually graciously came over and spent time with our family and then said it. And obviously she can't give us a diagnosis, but she said it in a loving way that, I think you might need to go through these evaluations. Yeah. And then being another sister in Christ, she's reminded us it's not the end of the world. This is all good things. She's still, God's child. And so I think hearing it from her was kind of God's grace to us.
Wow.
But, before hearing it clinically in like a waiting room or something.
Really interesting.
So Cassia was how old at that point?
She was about 15 months when we first started, exploring her evaluations. And she got her diagnosis right around 2 years of age.
And tell me how that journey progressed.
So it was pretty awesome in that it was straightforward in the fact that we didn't have to wait ages and years for her diagnosis. Yeah. So by the age of 2, we got our diagnosis, which meant we can go and get all the therapies that we needed. Right. Have her in the special education preschool that was actually in our neighborhood. And she responded, pretty well to all of those interventions and services. So I think, we kind of, that was her journey. And then, like I said, we have twin girls, and they're both with autism. Yeah. But as different as they are, their diagnoses were also very, very different.
Interesting.
So, at this time, we were going through all of this with Cassie, and Violet was actually speaking. She was, because they were twins, we also had her go through the evaluations. We said, hey, she's her twin sister. Let's take a look at this. And so we had her evaluated, and then we kept getting, kind of turned away. It's like, oh, yep, she's fine. She's, meeting all her milestones. We're okay. So we kind of, thought we were okay in that sense. And then that's why her journey at the age of 3.5, I think, that's when she got kicked out of her preschool because she just had such a rapid regression that we still today don't understand what happened in that time frame. So when she was talking, now we lost all that language. And we didn't have schooling, we didn't have all the things that we had with Cassie, right, at such a early age. Right. So I think, it's hard to look back at that time frame and figure out what happened or what didn't happen. But that's kind of to explain, both girls' journeys and where we're at now.
So I have a question here, and that question is, what surprised you most about being in a family, the child with a disability? But I want to ask a question before that, and that is, tell me emotionally how that hit both of you, as a mom and as a dad, when you see a child regressing and you realize it's not just one child, but both of these daughters that you love desperately. Emotionally as a dad, emotionally as a mom, how did that hit you at that point in your life?
I mean, I guess we would just describe it like, grief, it's loss, right? Loss. Just last night, I don't know why I go down this rabbit hole, but I'll look up old videos of Violet talking. Yeah. And it's like I don't know why I do that to myself, but you look at the child that you thought you had, that you wanted to have, you expected, and when things don't pan out the way you thought, it's hard. Yeah. Loss of anything is hard to deal with. So.
Wow.
Tim, as a dad?
Devastating and horrifying might be 2 words that I can recall just how I felt, because your desire to help grow and nurture these children are then met by this counteracting phenomenon of loss of speech, behavior regression. Getting kicked out of preschool is a pretty embarrassing thing, if anything. And just not being able to physically get in there and support them, and not even knowing how to support them, put us at a loss.
So in the midst of these, I mean, one way to describe, Talida, what you're saying is this is ambiguous loss. It's like loss over what you thought you had, loss over what could have been, and just all the grief and sadness and shock. So what's, in the midst of these emotions, what's surprised you the most?
Do you want to take that one?
I think the first couple of memories I have around that time were I was surprised at how suddenly isolated we became.
Wow.
We had been
Suddenly isolated.
Yeah. We had been longtime members of our church community. They're still wonderful. We had a lot of friends who were coming around us in prayer. But because they didn't experience what we
How do they relate to
experienced,
you now?
How do they relate to
Your
us?
life
Or
is
they don't know
drastically
what to
changed.
say.
They don't know
Right.
what to
Yeah.
say.
And we found it, difficult to sit in service. I would be kind of just gritting my teeth before pickup, in the daycare. What happened today? What kind of behaviors are we dealing with? I remember one of the teachers during violence regression, just mentioning like, you guys have a lot that's going on right now, and that really
And that was said
shocked
in an
me.
accusatory way or said in a compassionate way?
Compassionate and very concerned way, based on her experience also with some of the community. And so we retreated, mentally, I think, at least. And because there
You
wasn't
retreated
a lot of...
from that community as far as how engaged you wanted to be and
Yeah, because you
emotional
can't show up
engagement?
to, a birthday party,
Oh, so-
a play date anymore in the same way. You're always trying to, corral the kids and make sure they don't act out of turn or, offend people. This is just kind of our way of keeping the peace and trying to be
That's well said.
to
be
retreat.
nice to
Wow.
other people. But, I don't think it's fair to them because our girls were just experiencing all of this change in themselves and their tantrums and their kind of emotional outbursts were probably just a result of that change.
Wow.
What's been surprising, I think it's interesting, equally isolating, but equally surprising would be how many others are also going through this
Yes.
life and this journey. So even since moving to Katy, we found this amazing community here
Yes,
at
we have.
Kingsland where we've met so many families where I just remember sitting in that room thinking, wow, you guys get it. And we don't have to spell it out for you, like what we're dealing with. And just, the more that we open up, the more frank we are with just saying, yeah, I've got 2 autistic girls. People will just start sharing their story. Like, oh, on the playground, this guy says, oh yeah, my older brother, he's got some high needs as well. And so people start sharing their stories with us the more we open up, which has been surprising.
It is funny. It becomes sort of a bridge of a different community, and
It does.
I would even say a deeper community at times.
It does.
So-
This is the Grace and Chaos podcast, but it's part of our Empowered Homes resources. And I love that this church, Kingsland Baptist Church, is so committed to families that we create resources for families all over the United States and all over the world. But one of my fears before I came to this church is I feared that there was at times like this idolatry of the family. Like I look around me and everyone has these perfect, beautiful families, and I just feel like mine's confusing and chaotic at times. And then as I got more involved and I realized this church is full of broken families.
Right.
Yes, we want to be empowered with the gospel, but it's also full of broken families. And I think our special needs community here is a reminder to all of us
Right.
that we're all in desperate need of Jesus.
Yep.
And even though we might have it together at times, in reality, we're all struggling with different things. And so I think our kids with special needs and our families with special needs serve as a reminder to our whole community of these truths.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. So in West Houston and Katy, I'm so grateful that we have this available at Kingsland. God has been good to us. But I would also charge anybody listening anywhere, you need to find community. Like it's amazing how all of us retreat, and you can almost fall in the trap of thinking, well, I can't leave again, and you can't do life that way. I guess you can,
yes,
but it is so much harder than when you have some deep connections in community. So those churches, those communities exist outside of West Houston and Katy.
Yes.
If you're not here, it's not the end for you. So here's another question. What is the biggest lesson, Tim and Talida, that God has taught or is teaching you on this journey that maybe you'd share with other families?
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of control, my previous idea
Right.
of control would probably be at the top of that list that I'm still learning. I think, maybe it was my upbringing or just experience in life that when there was a problem, when you put enough work at something,
You fix it.
Right.
You solve it.
things, yes, turn to just work out when you work hard enough, right? I think that's what I learned early on maybe in life, and I had to unlearn that because that I was fighting God for that control, right? And I think God is showing me I don't need to be in control because He is in control.
That's amazing.
And and I should stop trying to.
Wow.
But I think on the other hand, or maybe equally, is that learning to be comfortable in this uncomfortable space, maybe this uncomfortable space called life, right? Like things are going to be hard when the girls might have behavior issues, or when we're in transition. Like the transition moving from New York to Katy was pretty difficult in the beginning.
Sure.
And
by the way, that was during COVID. You mentioned
was-
that briefly,
right.
Tim. So just a little bit of a,
yeah.
an extra challenge.
Yeah, and and just knowing that in those moments of pain and discomfort or whatever it is, God is never leaving us.
Yeah.
Talida, dig in, go a little bit further. So you said being comfortable in those uncomfortable spaces. You didn't say being peaceful. You didn't say not squirming in those uncomfortable. You said being comfortable. So how do you do that? How can you find and live try to be comfortable in an uncomfortable reality with your girls at times? How do you do that practically?
I mean, I would kind of lean back, and this is maybe another aspect of my life, but as a runner, I like to run, and I only found this in the past 5 years or so. But that's one of the terms that one of the running coaches use all the time.
Gotcha.
Like being uncomfortable or being comfortable in that uncomfortable pace, right? So maybe I use that when
Doesn't
I
make it
learn.
easy, does it?
It doesn't, but it takes practice, and then you learn.
Yes.
And I use that feeling, and then I kind of just channel that when things are not going the way I want them to at home, and then just say, this is not okay, but that's okay.
Wow.
Okay, so I'm trying to track this train of thought. So your running coach has taught you that to grow as a runner, you have to run at a different pace, probably a faster pace. So you're going faster, you're pushing your body, and you are choosing to be comfortable even though your body is maybe your heart, your lungs are screaming at you, and you get used to that.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to do sometimes every day at home.
That's right.
With your girls.
That's what it feels like.
Great analogy. Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
So episode 1, when we talked about the lesson, the first thing that Jacob and Melissa Robinson said is recognizing that you can't be in control.
Yep.
And so it's so interesting. And then I found it ironic that we actually, as we thought about the name of the podcast, we called it Grace in the Chaos.
Chaos.
So I think we all kind of recognize we're out of control.
chaos.
And
We're
it's
out
a
of
little
control.
bit jarring,
It
right?
is.
It is.
But you've added something really interesting when we talk about this idea. It's not just saying, okay, I guess we throw up our hands, we're not in control. But there's a discipline.
Yes.
It's a discipline to surrender
Yes.
in the midst of the chaos, right?
Yeah. And I think that's what I've learned is, I would characterize myself as somebody who has struggled with discipline of all kinds in my life. And it's not a shock that I discovered that I am lacking in the area of discipline with respect to parenting and at a deeper level, understanding myself so that I can parent. And what I mean by that is I'll kind of just go through the motions because those are the right things to do. but I find myself frustrated or angry or disappointed or bitter, and I wouldn't understand why. So I think what God has been teaching me is I have to be a lot more introspective, not in a navel-gazing way, but in a objectively critical way of looking at my motivations, what makes me excited or makes me disappointed. And only by doing that have I been able to slowly kind of tease out the reasons why I do certain things or don't do certain things. That's been helped hugely by the community that we have here because we have accountability built into our support groups, through our Bible studies, and that is one of the main challenges that I put myself in. Again, I don't want to.
Right.
But discipline takes a lot of repetition in order to build up.
The discipline of being out of control. It seems kind of ironic.
Exactly.
But I'm not just talking to two friends. We're talking to two software development people, right? That's where you lived a part of your life, and it's your training, which I would think would be very ordered and structured. There's a place to start and a path to follow. And now you find yourself in this world where you really don't know what the world holds. So was there an aha moment or a certain way that you guys realized,
question.
okay, we can't live this way, and so we're going to make a decision to do it this other way? For families listening who are just like, I don't know how to do that. I feel the chaos, but I haven't found the grace.
Might still be learning
Yeah.
how to do that.
Right?
I mean, I don't know if there was one exact aha moment. I think for myself, when I started looking, I guess the word would be like curiosity, like looking at my girls with more curiosity instead of just judgment of, okay, you're having this massive epic meltdown, instead of just judging and trying to get rid of it and, like get back to normal, right? If once I started getting curious, like what is she trying to communicate? What is it that's going on? What in her world is she not comprehending or, understanding, or what happened, right? Then I started acting with more compassion. But I don't know. I'm far from practicing this regularly.
Right. All of us are there. But at least you have a
starting.
plan. I mean, the idea that you can even name it and say, this is something that would really help is a blessing for your family and for all of us.
How do you talk to yourself in the midst of that tantrum?
Yeah.
In some ways, you're trying to talk to your girls, but you're kind of having an out-of-body experience where you have to talk to yourself.
Right.
And what are you telling yourself in that moment?
I guess it would be maybe first is like it's not a direct judgment or response to me. Like it's not necessarily a me problem.
There's something else happening in
right.
their minds or around them that...
Right. Or instead of just jumping to, oh, she's upset because I didn't cook mac and cheese for dinner. Okay, it's my fault or whatever. It's, well, let's just dig deeper, right? I think there's a big, there's a nice visual of a tantrum being kind of like the tip of the iceberg, and then that's the behavior, but all the stuff underneath, it's just, it could be, who knows, maybe someone earlier in the day, there was just lots of people at school that were,
Right.
Getting on the bus. Maybe there was a substitute teacher. There's all these little things that if I just keep getting curious about and ask, maybe I'll understand a little bit more and act with more compassion instead of just judgment.
So engaging your girls with the eyes of empathy and curiosity
Right.
instead of that instinctive frustration, or even at times...
Or even
the
just
anger.
trying to solve.
Just trying to solve
Right.
it, fix
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a similar question about talking to yourself. So this is different in that it's not in the moment of a tantrum, but if you could sit down and have coffee with yourself in that season when Violet was going through that regression and you were just trying to figure out life and friends are withdrawing and you can't quite figure out why, and you're confused and you're sad and you're just, what do you tell your younger self over coffee in that? Because we hopefully we'll have listeners that are in that right now. So what do you tell your younger self, or what would you tell those listeners?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think maybe one thing I would say is stop trying to look perfect, stop trying to be perfect, because that's just been always a struggle, you know, in my personal life of maybe earning some righteousness that was never mine
That's
to
great.
earn. Right,
Yes.
right. And perfection belongs to Jesus, right? But I don't know. I mean, practically just, give yourself grace. Like really understand what grace means. Because I think maybe this has just been a long journey for God to teach me what that is.
Gosh, that's
one
good.
thing.
Yeah. Tim?
I have this thing where I joke that if I ever met like the younger me of 5 years ago, each time I would probably slap him in the face.
That's not nice, Tim. You should
I
be
know.
nicer to Tim.
So I think my message to myself is I would be encouraging also more grace upon myself. Be kinder to yourself, because I think maybe for the dads out there, you could view this as something that you have a weight on your shoulders
Yes.
of, did I do something wrong?
Yes.
I'm a dad, so I fix, I deal with things. How come I can't deal
Yeah.
with this? And it's a downward spiral where you could really put yourself in a dark place of being immobile, because one, you can't design a system or a program out of this mess that you find yourself in. And I'm talking about the mess of like your mental state, but also
Right.
you can't solve your way out of it just by calculation. And I think that is
Like you can with a lot of the rest of life.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I would gently coach myself through
After the
that.
slap.
After the slap,
Yes.
of course. Slap twice, actually. I think that's a really hard lesson for the dads that I've met, before we came to Kingsland and even here now, because a lot of them, I think, feel that way, and they withdraw because they can't face other people
Yeah.
with that weight.
Right.
I think some of the weight, Tim, and I have felt this and still feel it some days, is I have failed. Like one of my goals and desires in life was to be a great and successful dad. And in those dark days and those hard moments, I feel I failed. And I think with special needs kids, the impotency that we can feel as men especially, like there's a lot of areas in life that we can just go out there and get her done and get it fixed. And this is something that we can't.
Yeah.
We can't fix it. We'll never be able to. And so how we extend grace to ourselves and how we delight in Jesus in the midst of that and in his power, and we don't have to fix it. We're not called to fix it. We're certainly not called to be in control. And I think that's becoming a big lesson, Ryan, of this grace in the chaos is we're not in control.
Right. So can I go back in the time
Yes.
machine with you? Because
Yes.
we've all been in that moment.
We have.
Everybody around this table and a lot of people watching where you're realizing nothing will ever be the same. Part of giving ourselves permission is not just to say, I'm going to let go of everything, but also permission to say, it's okay to have a list and do everything you can
Yes,
as well.
that's true.
But so it's a balance, right? It's
is.
not as simple as saying, okay, I throw up my hands and just relax and take this in and be who you are. There is a sense where we're trying to rest in God. Maybe that's the running illustration again, but we're also saying, hey,
You're still
man,
moving. You're still going hard.
I'm going to fight for everything I know that I can do that's in my control. And trying to find the balance between those two is really hard.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
That's the trick.
Yeah. So, Ryan, how have you in your special needs journey, how do you find that sweet spot of doing everything you can, everything in your power to provide and care for your family, your daughter, but also getting to the point of saying, we've done what we can now? Like, how do you find that sweet spot?
I mean, part of that's time, right? For all of us, I think as time goes by, you do that more. And anecdotally, when we visit with people within our group who've had children longer, they seem to have a little bit more peace.
Yeah.
So I think that's time. But going back to Talida's point about the theological basis of this,
Yes.
you can do that right here, right now, to say, you know what? I don't have to earn God's favor.
That's right.
God is not mad at me. That's not why this is happening.
Yes.
And so I can rest in grace. And out of that grace, okay, now
Yes.
Now I'm going to look around and see what I can do to love my child well.
Right.
That's the difference, I guess.
I see, like, we see grace as something we need, like, to be saved. It's what Jesus accomplished for us on the cross and his resurrection, and it's God's grace that saves us.
Yes.
But the reality is it's God's grace that sustains us right now.
Yeah.
The fact that we can breathe and have this conversation, it's God's grace that sustains us in every moment with all of our children, whether they're typical or have special needs.
Right. And it's in
God's
that grace that
sustains
we
us.
still have joy. All of
Yes.
us around this table. And there's some, you're listening and you're thinking, I can't imagine having joy again. You can. You can operate in this and have that intentional willingness to be out of control. And you can tell I'm not a runner. Okay, but if I was, okay, this is painful, but I'm going to be comfortable in the discomfort. That's great. All right. So before we go,
Game time.
that's right.
Yep.
Game shows sometimes have a lightning round, and Chris had the bright idea that we would have a lightning round in our podcast,
Yes.
and I want to give him full credit so that I can give him full blame for what's about to happen. So we're going to have a few questions. Just answer whatever comes to mind. Don't take a long time. You don't have to think through it. There's no wrong answers. And then we'll go from there. We may push back. We may ask a question, but just say what's on your mind.
Yes. You ready
Especially
for
with
this?
Tim. We may make fun of him.
Yes, we might.
Please do.
Bring it on.
We're not going to slap you then. Okay, for both of you, best book you've read recently.
Okay. I love a good memoir or even a bad memoir. I love all memoirs. I would say Michael K. Williams. He was
Okay.
the actor on The Wire. He played Omar Little.
Okay.
He was working on a memoir and then he tragically died.
Wow.
And then, but he had a
Enough.
co-author who was able to finish it.
To release it.
Wow.
But I mean, I love stories of celebrities, but
Okay.
he had quite a background. So go out there, especially if you're a Wire fan. Go
All
read
right.
it.
Excellent.
I'm going to plug two. One is Dark Clouds, Deep Mercy by Mark Vroegop.
Yep.
This is something we're going through
Right.
to explore the topic of lament,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm still learning a lot about.
Right.
But I think it's a core component of this journey where you have to be able to go to God with complaints, as weird as it sounds, but in a biblical way, in order to understand yourself and to, I think, be built up into the man that God wants you to be, even in this journey.
And Mark's dark clouds in that book, it's very, very dark indeed.
Very dark.
Very dark.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad, tragic what happened to he and his family.
Yep.
So it's a story of hope.
Encourage any of the parents out there who have not found a resource yet to pick that up and give that a read. Second book I'll plug is Outlive by Peter Tia, because Chris knows I love me some Peter Tia.
Yes, you do.
And I
This
think,
book is about 4 inches thick.
yeah, you actually can do some weights with it. But the concept of building a strong physical foundation in order to care for your special needs kids, I think is an interesting topic.
That is an
that
interesting
maybe we have not explored a lot.
It's true.
During COVID, we ate for comfort. We're saying to ourselves, let's just get through the day. If we indulge a little bit, it's fine. And then you find yourself in a very unhealthy state, as I did when we first moved here. So being able to, this is another part of discipline, take those things that would otherwise bring you away from discipline and really try to understand, not that, this book is a Bible or has all the answers, but the concept of God made you to serve. So how do you serve well if you are not taking care of yourself?
Yeah.
This is not also to say you need to elevate your health and well-being above everything else.
Right.
There has to be an order to it, but you have to place it higher than I think maybe a lot of us who might just throw it by the wayside, say, I'll take care of it later, and maybe I'll find a pill or some special program that will fix me. I think we'd like to encourage the parents out there who are on that kind of train of thought to really dig into how you can build
Come
up
on.
your
Yeah.
physical body to serve your physical family and your spiritual family.
Well, Tim, it's making me think of when we're blessed and challenged with kids with special needs, we can go into these subtle ways of medicating ourselves. And it could be food. It could be our jobs, our hobbies, alcohol. There's lots of things people turn to kind of self-medicate. And I think just reflecting on having a healthy body and mind and how that relates to our ability to care for our kids, that's great insight. Not for selfish ends,
Okay.
but to care.
Yeah, I see two
Love it.
comments for that before we go on. Number one, I foresee in the future another episode with the Chens to talk about the lesson of self-care. Take care of yourselves as parents.
Yes.
And number two, this is the least lightning round.
That's my fault.
in
My fault.
history. Okay.
Yes, he's telling me to move ahead.
No, no, it's just
favorite
fact.
food of your child with special
Okay,
needs.
we'll be quick with this one. Sushi.
Sushi.
For both.
For both.
For both.
Yeah.
They like
Excellent. So you get a 3-hour break from your girls that you're not expecting. And aside from joining
Look at
your
the
lovely
joy
host,
on their faces. Right.
aside from joining your lovely host in a podcast, what would you do in those 3 hours?
What would you do?
So one thing that Talida and I have started doing more frequently is doing daytime lunch dates.
Great.
We can't really do it in the evenings. It's challenging right now. But in the hours that we have, in the pockets of time, we try to make it a priority to just spend time with each other without a lot of other
Just you have flexibility
things
with your
going
job
on.
and can do
Yeah,
that.
and
Great.
you know, obviously, I'm privileged to have that with a more flexible work schedule. But I would not, you know, there's nothing I would rather do than spend time with my wife when I have some time.
Good answer.
Can I answer
It really
differently?
Talida, yes.
Sure.
Go running.
Yeah, it would be. So 3 hours, I could probably do an hour-long run and then an
Go.
hour-long strength and then a nice stretch and shower afterwards. So
There we go. Very good. What, for Cassie and Violet, what's a unique skill or fascination they have right now?
I think we'll start with Cassie. She has this insane ability to learn things. She kind of taught herself how to read, but she learns by memorization. So we showed these random YouTube videos over the summer, and she kind of learned the two basic sets of Japanese characters, katakana, hiragana, within like 3 weeks.
Okay.
That's amazing.
That's one. And then Violet, she's really strong. She can do pull-ups, monkey bars. She can live on
Nice.
them. She's also very artistic. So I think we saw that she would express herself through art. So right now, we saw the other day, she was drawing a little monkey and a bunny. But during the time of COVID, what she was doing, before she was drawing caterpillars, and then during those months, she was actually just scratching big sheets of black scratch all over. So that was very telling what was going on in her head.
Interesting.
Wow.
Interesting. Okay, what soundtrack, what music is on repeat in your cars?
So anything Taylor Swift, I would
Okay.
say folklore or the latest Taylor's version. That's, honest
Mom's
answer.
choice or girl's choice?
Mom's choice.
Now
There
it's
we
become
go.
girls'
Well,
choice.
now they actually request.
Okay.
Yes.
I tend to put on things that don't distract me when I'm working.
Don't say Peter Attia
no,
podcast.
no. That would be too distracting.
Or Andrew Huberman, I don't want to hear it,
engrossing.
Tim.
Yeah. Classical music, I think, is a great way to kind of calm yourself
Yeah.
and also focus. And then synthwave, if you're into that, it's kind of a 80s
Do you know this? Synth-
theme
I'm
type
not
of background music.
I'm not familiar with synth wave.
I'm not either. I'm
Link
not
in the
interested.
show
you.
notes.
Yeah.
Link
I
in
know.
the show notes. We need to find that out. Favorite city in the world?
Tokyo.
Tokyo.
Wow,
that's
both
a
of you
quick
right
response.
away with affection.
And last one, a little perhaps more serious on this one. Future dream for your girls.
We were discussing, dreams and aspirations before. If there was only one, it would be that they would come to know the Lord. In the special needs community, there is sometimes a challenging viewpoint of if the child is nonverbal, if they're cognitively maybe not able to understand the gospel message, how do we know?
Yeah.
And first, I think to encourage the parents, I think Pastor Ryan's clarification on this is that there is grace involved in that as well.
Yeah.
But I think what is hugely encouraging to us at Kingsland is that the lessons provided speak directly to the children about Jesus. It's not babysitting. It's not just a place to hang out. No matter what age, ability level, degree of comprehension, I think the gospel is preached, and that would be
that's beautiful.
my wish, that my girls would know who Jesus is and love him.
I love that too. I love that too. That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
I think the same. That was well said.
So good.
Thank you.
You guys have blessed us so
Absolutely.
much today. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having
We
us.
want to thank everybody for joining us and Grace in the Chaos again. Remember, you can find all sorts of resources at empoweredhomes.org, including hundreds for special needs families. So I hope you'll check that out. This podcast is a ministry of Kingsland Baptist Church in Katy, Texas. And you can find out more about us at kingsland.org. God bless you. Have a great day. Thank you, guys.
God bless you. Thank you, everyone.